Hi guys, it's Teresa. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about my 2019 DNFs. I did a video like halfway through the year talking about my mid-year DNFs. So this is the full thing, all the books I DNF'd in 2019. So the first book I DNF'd in 2019 was The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas, a very controversial thing, I know, but I personally did not enjoy this book. I don't think it was written very well. I don't think it necessarily sent the right messages all the time, and I just really didn't enjoy it. I understand that the book is trying to tackle a very difficult issue and that a lot of people do appreciate the way that it was dealt with in the book. I personally didn't think so, and I just didn't, enjoy my reading experience as a whole, and I would much rather read a book that tackles such an issue in a little bit more of a more well-rounded way, I guess. And that's also just better from a purely literary point of view. So I'm not trying to say that this book is like harmful or anything, because I'm not the person to make that decision at all. But I just didn't think it was done as well as it could have been, and I didn't particularly enjoy this one. My next DNF was Dead Cold by Louise Penny. This is the second book in the Chief Inspector Armand Gamache mystery series. It's set in Canada, and it follows a small town where a ton of murders occur. So it doesn't seem like a very safe place to live. But I really did not think that this was well written or very good. My main issue with this book was the pacing. The mystery didn't start until like 100 pages into the book, and I didn't like any of the characters. They're all so judgmental, and they're like kept remarking upon everyone else's appearance when that didn't really add anything to the story or the plot. Like, it just seemed unnecessary to keep reminding everyone how like fat a particular person was, or like how ugly they were. Like, I just don't understand the point of that. So don't need to read about that. And if there's no mystery and like the main character isn't introduced until like halfway through the story, I just don't care. So unfortunately, this is a series that I don't think I'll be continuing because I don't like it. Sorry. The next book I DNF'd, I literally only read 5 pages of, so keep that in mind. But that is We Were the Mulvaneys by Joyce Carol Oates. I don't exactly know what this book is about, but I do think it follows a family and kind of just like their history or something like that. And I just from the get-go felt like this was way too detailed to be at all enjoyable to me. Like, honestly, on page 3 or something, we get a description how to get to their family house, and it's literally written like, first you take this road, then you pass these buildings, then you turn a right and you go past the school, and then you take a left and you do, I'm like, why do I care? I don't understand why I'm supposed to care about this, and I just couldn't get into it. I don't know if that's this particular book or just Joyce Carol Oates is a writer. I don't know. This was my first attempt at reading a book by her, and it clearly wasn't very successful, so maybe I'll try something else. The next book I DNF'd was Dating You, Hating You by Christina Lauren. This is an adult romance that's supposed to be a hate-to-love story following 2 celebrity agents who basically are competing for the same job, and then they start sabotaging each other to get ahead, and I just really hated them as people. And they're so petty and childish, and they played all these like literally kindergarten pranks on each other that I couldn't stand. I didn't enjoy them as people. I didn't care if they were gonna get together or not. Like, I just was not invested at all in this story, and I didn't think it was well done at all. So unfortunately, I had to DNF this one. I did enjoy their book, Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating, like 1,000% more. So, and that's actually on my best books of the year list. I don't know what happened with this one. It just didn't work for me. The next book I DNF'd was Educated by Tara Westover. I listened to this on audiobook. This is basically an autobiography of the author growing up in a very rural area, basically without a lot of rules, and just sort of raising herself off the grid. Like, she and her siblings didn't go to school. They didn't have birth certificates until very much later and all that stuff. So it was very much an alternative lifestyle, and she just sort of tells her story growing up. And the reason I DNF'd this is just because I wasn't particularly interested in how the story was going. Like, this sounds very mean, especially considering that this is a person's life, but I just didn't really feel invested in it. I didn't feel like I cared all that much about what was happening. And again, feel mean saying it, but that's just how it was. And I just didn't really see why necessarily she was telling the story to what end, right? So I don't know. This might just be me like not having connected with the book and nothing to do with the book itself. you might enjoy it more, but it just really wasn't for me. At some point in the year, and I don't know exactly because I was for the longest time convinced that I was going to finish the book, but then I never did, I DNF'd Blindside by Meg Howry. I really enjoyed The Crane's Dance by this author, so I wanted to read more of her stuff, and this is actually a YA book following a boy who moves to LA to stay with his father, who he hasn't had a lot of contact with, and he is also, while he's staying there, like writing his college application essay, and the book is told in like a really weird style where you get the essay, which is from the first perspective, but then you also get just glimpses of the boy's life, called Luke, I think, written in the third person, and it's just such a jarring jump between the two, and I don't understand why this decision was made. It really took me out of the story, and honestly, it always felt like just when I was getting into the writing of the second, like the other perspective, it switched and I was completely out of it again. So I never really fully connected to the book. And again, I just didn't care about Luke too much, about his life growing up as a teenager in LA. Like, just, nah. Just not that interesting at the end of the day. Then I DNF'd The Black Iris by Leah Reader, which also made it on my worst books of the year video, because to me this book is just tragedy porn, honestly. It's about a teenager whose mother commits suicide and she struggles with mental illness, drug addiction, alcohol addiction, a whole bunch of shit in her life, and basically just feeds into that and kind of works herself into a pit of despair from which she finds no escape. And she makes no attempts to improve her life or her situation. She's just out for revenge on a boy that did something bad to her. We don't know what. And overall, I just didn't feel like this book was sending particularly good messages, just because of the way that the sort of experiences of the main character with drugs and with alcohol were described. It almost seemed like it was glorifying them and sort of glorifying this idea of like indulging in your unhealthy behavior and encouraging toxic behavior and all that stuff. So I just didn't like the way that those things were depicted particularly. And at some point it was just exhausting to read, because the language was so flowery and so just, yeah, kind of romanticizing everything a little bit too much for my taste. And the main character was frustrating because, as I said, she wasn't like helping herself in any way. She was sort of just digging herself in deeper into a shitty situation. And I understand, like, when you have mental illness, that isn't super easy, like to just be like, oh, now I'm fine. But I just wanted her to like at least work on these things at least a little bit, and she never did. So after a while, I just didn't feel like there was much point in me continuing this book. Another book I DNF'd is The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. This was one of my most disappointing books of the year, and I was kind of more disappointed in myself than in this book, because I had heard so many great things about it and I really wanted to enjoy it, but it was so slow paced and it had so little plot that I just really couldn't get myself to care. I love that this book really plays with the idea of what would happen if humanity would take to space, basically, and encounter all these alien species. It sort of deals with this idea that were we to go into space, these issues that we deal with now, such as racism and discrimination and like ideas of purity and stuff like that, would be basically taken to the nth degree among the species. So there would be species that considered themselves superior. Some were more aggressive, like basically just like cultures clashing on like a much more extreme level, because it would be different species that had developed completely separate from one another for like eons. And I really like that concept. I think it deals with and talks about some very, very interesting ideas in a very, very interesting and like gripping way. But to me, there wasn't anything else that I was gonna read this book for. Like, I didn't particularly care about the characters. I wasn't really interested in the plot because there was so little of it. And I just didn't feel like reading more of this book when it was just gonna be this like interest in the society that was driving me, to read it. I also DNF'd The Song Rising by Samantha Shannon. This is the third book in the Bone Season series, and I actually reread the Mayim Order last year, I believe, in order to read this one. I didn't make it to this one, but I did pick it up. Like, I have picked it up 1,000 times before and never gotten very far. And this time I was like in between books and I thought, you know what? I'm just gonna give it another try. And again, unsurprisingly, this just isn't for me anymore. I don't feel connected to the characters. I don't think they're particularly well written. I don't like Paige as a main character. I don't think Warden is all that interesting. I don't like the plot. It's very predictable and like A to B to C. structured, and I'm just not interested in seeing what happens next. And so, unfortunately, I'm gonna once and for all say this is it. I've said it 1,000 times. I feel like I've DNF'd this book multiple times over, like officially DNF'd it, but this is really it. I promise you. This is unfortunately really it. I have to give it up because it just isn't working for me and it's not happening. Second to last, I have Machines Like Me by Ian McEwan. This is a 2019 release, set in an alternate universe 1980s time period where like artificial intelligence humans, robots have been developed. So basically humanoid robots that function exactly like humans do, almost exactly. And the main character of the book acquires one of these robots called Adam, and he moves in with him, and he and his girlfriend get into like a love triangle with this Adam AI robot person. This book just wasn't what I was expecting from it. It's very heavily focused on the alternate universe politics and history, and I just did not care about that at all. I just wanted more focus on the sci-fi element of it, on the dynamic between the three characters, but I got about a third of the way into it and I didn't feel any connection to them. I didn't feel like their struggles were particularly interesting or relatable, and I just realized like this book is not what I thought it was gonna be, and I had to unfortunately put it down. And then lastly, a book I'm going to mention as having DNF'd it because that is technically what I did, but I still want to eventually read it. And that is Dark Dawn by J. Kristoff. I only got like 35 pages into it, and I just didn't care. I filmed a reading vlog for the first book, Nevernight, which was a reread, and then reading God's Grave. And God's Grave to me was quite disappointing. So moving into Dark Dawn, I honestly just wasn't super optimistic, and also I just kind of lost interest at that point with this world because I had just read 2 books set in it, and I just didn't feel like picking up or like actually making it through such a tome. Also, since I'd heard like kind of negative things about the book, I had read like some less than positive reviews, so I wasn't like motivated basically by all accounts. So I decided to put it down. And I still want to read it eventually because I have it and it's stunning and I want to see how the series finishes, but also I'm not super hyped about it anymore. And I'm probably going to put this off for quite a while until I finally get to it. I do still have like the vlog clips of like reading the first 2 books. They're still there. I'm going to just preserve them until I can finish the vlog and finish this book. But yeah, that's just unfortunately what I had to do this year because I just, it's so much about timing when reading books, and it was just the wrong timing for me. And that is it for all the books DNF'd in 2019. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know which books you DNF'd this year. I love DNFing. I think it's so, like, such a relief often when I can decide for myself to put a book down and, like, not worry about it anymore. And it feels great. Everybody should do it. Please do it. Often when you hate the first 100 pages of a book, it doesn't get much better than that. And like at the very most, it's still gonna be like a 2 or 3 star because you hated so much of it. So why put yourself through the torture? Honestly, it's not worth it. There's so many great books out there. Don't read the ones that you don't enjoy. You already know that you're not enjoying them. So that's just my 2 cents on that. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and come back very soon. I'm currently doing a ton of end of year wrap up videos, so check them out if you haven't already, and stay tuned for more very soon. Until then, have a lovely week. Bye!